Hey guys, welcome back to the channel for another Dell 3880 upgrade video. If you just joined us now, there's a playlist for this thing, which I'll throw right up there for you and down in the description so you can go get all caught up and go follow along with everything I've done to this thing. Today's installment is going to be installing an optical drive in it, which will go right here. To my surprise, I've actually had a good many people contact me about how to do exactly that. I would have thought by now most people would be over having an optical drive in their machines, but clearly not the case from my audience anyway. I even had a commenter recently ask me how to eject their optical drive, and I suspect that commenter does not actually have an optical drive. This machine, this is just a blank drive cover. You can see it looks like it should just eject on out of there and have a drive inside it. And there's no drive in here. The ones that do have a drive will have a button on them right here, and I think maybe 2 holes. And I'll throw a picture comparison contrasting the 2 models so you can determine if you have one or not. Also, I've been asked many times to make these step-by-step installation guides, which I'm happy to do as well as I'm able to do. But if you've seen any of my videos, you know there'll be some editorial along the way and it won't be 1, 2, 3. And this video I honestly thought would be a 1, 2, 3, like a 3-minute long video. Here's a Dell part number and off you go. That's completely not what happened. The first thing you're going to need is an optical drive to install in it. You'd think that would be pretty straightforward. You just call up Dell and say, yeah, I want to buy an optical drive for this computer. Here's my service tag number. And if you don't know, your service tag will be back here on the back of the machine, right by the USB ports and Ethernet jack, where it says ST, that's my service tag. And just order one of these with the proper front bezel and everything we want. However, that's not what happened to me. I spent over an hour on hold with Dell, got transferred around to a few people. None of them could help me. Eventually, Dell support actually just hung up on me. Dell email support was completely useless. They wanted to schedule a call to call me back and all this crap, and they ultimately never did. So I just straight up gave up. If you go to Dell's webpage, you'll actually see that you can find, if you look hard enough, a drive for sale. But what they're selling you is just the drive. There's no front bezel on it at all. So this guy on the front just isn't there. And you can also see this drive happens to have just been one I pulled out of a laptop. And you can see that it's got this funky angle on it to match whatever laptop it was in and won't match our case very well. And that was of particular disappointment to me because I have a pile of these things. I've got like 6 or 8 of them sitting around. So if you already have a drive sitting around that you want to use, you have a few options, but I don't think any of them are very good, but we'll review them anyway. You can buy a regular cover for the front of your drive. And as you can see, this cover is just flat. Nothing special to it, got a button on it. The problem you're going to run into is not every laptop drive has the same attachment features. So you'll have to scour the earth to find these things that might hook onto the drive you have. This one I got on eBay straight from China. It was like $12 anyway, and it took 6 weeks to get here, so not recommended. Your next option is to buy one of these, which is a second hard drive caddy kit. This will work for most laptops that have an optical drive. You can just take the optical drive out and use one of these to install the hard drive. That's what this bay is for. And we'll probably use this in a different capacity later for a different video. But this particular one I bought, you can see still has a regular optical drive front on it. It's even got a button that, connects to nothing. So you could harvest this and pop it off of there if you had a drive to put it on. I think this thing was also 10 or 12 bucks, but it was from Amazon, so I got it next day. Still not a great idea. What I highly advise everyone out there do is buy this exact model of LG drive, which I will link down in the description for you, that has a flat face on it already out of the factory and will go in our case just fine. At least as of the date I bought this one, it all goes in there just fine. I did look at buying a Blu-ray drive to put in it just for fun, but those things are like over $100 for a laptop form factor like this and decided to pass on it for now. So this is the drive I will be installing, and now you know why. And I think it was also pretty inexpensive when I bought it. It wasn't enough money past these other options to make it worth it to reuse an old drive. And because step-by-step video, you're also going to need a toolkit. I've owned this toolkit for about 30 years now, and it looks like StarTech actually still sells this exact kit branded under their name. I'm going to try and do every upgrade with the Dell using only this toolkit. It's a nice little kit. Comes with a little thing to keep your screws organized and all that stuff, but not very expensive and nice to have around. So with all that commentary out of the way, the first step that we're going to need to take to gain access to this thing is to get these 2 thumb screws out. Mine were actually pretty tight, so I'm just going to take the Phillips screwdriver from the kit and just loosen them up. They don't actually come all the way out, or they're not supposed to anyway. They stay in there. Get them loose, grab that, pull straight back, tilt it off, out of our way it goes. Our next step is going to be to remove this front plastic bezel. And to do that, we have these 3 clips that have little arrows on them. 1, 2, 3. Just pull them out and it'll kind of pop off. You may need to do more than one at one time. Now it's free, and this will just hinge off the front just like that. So this is what the front of the computer looks like without that bezel on it. Up here is our drive bay, and it's got this sheet metal cover on it, which I think is probably an RF shield or something. But you'll see it says pull, and there are these 2 little tabs. Just grab those and pull this thing straight out, and it'll come off, and then you can just chuck this thing, throw it away. We don't need it anymore. The next thing we need to do is prepare our bezel to accept the drive up here. And I'll warn you guys, I actually have broken my cover already, which is not a big deal because I don't want to go back to just a slot cover at any point in time. But you can see, even with how I've broken mine, it still fits in here. There used to be 4 tabs. When I first recorded this, I said this thing had 4 clips on it, and I only noticed after I watched the final edited video that it actually only has 2, which could explain why I broke it. And I wasn't paying enough attention when I took it apart the first time and broke those 2 lower ones off. Managed to find one of them just hanging out. But this is still no real big deal. Just take a small flat blade screwdriver, and it helps to kind of just get under that one, and then this thing pops out. When you still have all 2, you may have to just kind of work at it and wiggle around. Obviously, I wish I could show you that, but since I broke mine, I can't. But now that they're popped out, there's a little handle on this thing. You can just grab it on that side, and then it has to pull out. You see it's got that engagement tooth in it that goes in the little window on the other side. So just pull her on out of there. So now that's prepared and ready to go. So the next thing we're going to do is just put this guy back on. And that's pretty straightforward. We have 3 hooks on the cover that engage 3 little windows in the front of the case. Just get them lined up. This shouldn't bind or anything. It should be nice and free. And just come around and gently push. And those 3 front clips snap back in, and we're good to go. And just because I have big sausage hands, I'm going to remove this fan duct just to give me a little better access to the back of the drive when it's time to plug the cords in. You can do this if you find that you need to. You don't have to. If you want to, it's very easy to do. They're just these 2 little blue levers. You just grab them and squeeze, and this thing just kind of wiggles on out of there, and it's out of our way. So now that I've done that, I've got my drive, just going to slide it in the front. You can see that it aligns with the screw holes. Those screw holes say M2 on them, which means they are M2 metric screws. The problem you're going to have is they are also M2 long, which are a very weird screw, and they're very hard to find. So what I have here is an M2x3 screw from this kit, which I will link down in the description for you, combined with 3 washers per side, M2 washers. Those guys are right there from this kit, which I will also link in the description for you, to build a conglomeration of things that looks like that. Actually, I already had both of these kits, so this was just what I had laying around. If you want to scour the earth trying to find the correct screws, go ahead. But if you use screws that are too long, your drive won't open, because the screws will actually run into the tray on the drive. And there we go. That's all there is to it. And I'll sink a second screw in there just because I can. 1 screw is actually plenty though. And this is just the small screwdriver out of our PC Tools kit. So now both screws are in it. And the next thing we need to do is plug our data and power cables in. The data cable is just hanging out here underneath this clip. Just pop it out of there, let it hang. Our power cable, we'll have to pull these other power cables out first and just let them hang. This is our power cable. This guy goes on the left-hand side. The data cable goes on the right-hand side. And we'll just tuck our power cord here that we got out back in out of our way. Those are just spares for additional drives in the future. And that is our connection at the top. You want to make sure the little L leg there on that dog leg points down. So we'll get him up there and plugged in. Data cable's the same story, but they make it easy because it only plugs in one direction since it's got that 90. And all done. We'll just tuck our cords back in out of the way as best as we can. It doesn't really matter if we perfectly mirror exactly what Dell would do. Just keep things orderly as you see fit. If you took the optional step of taking the fan duct off, now is the time to put it back on. It just sort of goes straight down and just kind of clips on. Maybe avoid the wires there. There we go. That's all there is to it. And then it's time to put our case side back on. And technically we're done. If I turn this thing on, I'm positive Windows would find it, and we'll do that here in a little bit. But this is the end of the required mechanical installation for this thing. The problem I have is this big gap around the outside of it. I really don't like how that looks. And that's why I was hoping to just buy a drive from Dell. And their drive would have a front on it that looks, kind of like that, so it would blend in a little bit better. But it's just mostly this gap that bothers me. And depending on how you look at the front of the case, you can actually see inside and see all the steel of the case and everything else behind it. And I'm just not real big on that. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways I came up with to sort of mitigate this and make it look just a little bit better. And my first proposal is to rewind things until we're back at this step where we've got the front bezel off, no drive, any of that stuff. Get yourself a Marks a Lot marker. This is like a Sharpie, except unlike a Sharpie, these are actually black. Sharpies are purple. If you use a lot of them or try and paint stuff with them, they're actually purple. And we're just gonna go around with our Marks a Lot and make a fair portion of this black. Kind of go around and color it in. So here's our drive, painted with our marker. And we'll just pop it in. And I can see some of the bright silver back here. So I should, keep painting down and stuff like that, bringing it out this way. But it's a lot better. The camera is showing you that bright silver back there that we should probably paint a little more. But in person, this is actually a pretty large improvement over just the regular bright steel. I would say 90% of people would look at this and never know anything was weird or any way that it shouldn't be. For the other 10% of us out there, I've got another idea to kind of fill in this gap with stuff you probably just have at home too. And that idea is just put a couple wraps of electrical tape around it. I think the vinyl electrical tape would probably work best for this, but all I have is the cloth stuff. We'll just use some and see how it goes. One thing you'll want to watch out for if you go with the electrical tape here is don't tape the drive shut. And also this tape is about double width too thick, so it won't actually fit back in the bay. So I have to take a razor blade and kind of cut that in half. Not my finest work. A little bit nicer on the bottom, but it will do. And you can see if you wanted to, you could keep going around this thing and around it and keep filling in that gap more and more and more if you wanted to. And you can see we can only just see maybe a touch of silver if we really, really work hard. And over on the corners, you might even put some toothpicks in there and tape around them or whatever. But there are things you can do at home to mitigate this if you want to. But because I can, which to me pretty much always means I should, I'm going to go ahead and do this instead. Boop! And drop in my little homemade, handmade, robot-made trim bezel there. So what that is a 3D printed little insert to take up some of that gap. You can see it does a pretty nice job filling everything out. I did go around it with the Marks a Lot and just kind of blacken that edge extra black to make it a little shiny. So it's sort of a comparison contrast with the rest of the case. And you can kind of see that it sets it off a little bit. But maybe we want to take this bug and turn it into a feature and make it contrast even more. We can do that too. So now we've got white. I kind of wish I would have maybe got a roll of silver, but I think matching the Dell silver would have been hard. But what I'm actually in the mood for right now is kind of the Imperial Star Destroyer look, we'll say, the red and black. I kind of been digging that right now. So if this is something you would like for yours and you would like to help financially support this channel, drop me an email down in the description. I'd be happy to make you one of these up and sell it to you. And there's my finished product. I've got my screws back in it. I've got all my cables hooked up. I've got my fan shroud just popped back on. I've got my trim bezel that I'm feeling right now put back in it. And the last thing we have to do is put our case side back on, which is pretty straightforward. You will see there are little hooks in the top and bottom of the side panel itself. And there are matching little pockets those engage with both top and bottom. So you just start the case side back a couple inches, get it slid in and push it forward and you're good to go. Then you just tighten the thumb screws back down in the back and you're done. And that should look something like this, I hope. Here we go. Got it slid forward. Tighten our screws. And that's that. That's my completed PC with my optical drive installed the way I would like it to be installed, or as well as I can install it. I'm going to go ahead and power this thing up and show you a couple of troubleshooting tricks that you might need to use if you're having trouble getting your drive to actually work. But the mechanical installation is actually pretty straightforward. If you are having trouble getting the drive to actually work, the first thing you want to do, and we're going to go in easiest to hardest here, is when you hit the power button, you should see this green light flicker. That'll show you that it's getting power at least. So power on, and we saw it flicker, so we know the drive's getting power. The next simple thing you're going to want to try if you're still having trouble is come down here to File Explorer, go over to this PC, and you should see the drive in here. And in fact, when you double click on that drive, which I'm going to do right now, it will eject your drive for you if there's no disk in it. So we know we have power, we know it's communicating with Windows, so this drive should be working. If you got to this point and it still wasn't reading disks or something like that, you probably have a defective drive. If you have power and Windows doesn't see the drive, there's one more thing we can try. And the last thing you can try from a complete power off boot up is to go into the system BIOS and see if we can actually see it on a hardware level there. To do that, you're going to want to push the power button on the computer when it's off and then start pushing F12 on your keyboard pretty much immediately. So there, I've just turned the power on. My Dell screen, I'm hitting F12. There we go. Something else that's interesting, you'll see that screen's all cut off. That's what happens when I have an HDMI monitor plugged in, or these are actually TVs, so maybe that's the issue. If I plug it in on VGA, that doesn't happen, so yours may look truncated and screwed up like this, or it may look fine. But what we're going to want to do is go down to BIOS Setup, hit Enter, and with it all truncated and funky like this, it's hard to see what's going on. We want to go to System Information. This window should scroll, but the scroll wheel doesn't work. So I'm going to try and take the mouse over to the side and see if I can grab the bar. I can't. Can I go over and can I just go down? Page down? I cannot. Page down doesn't work. Page up doesn't work. My roller doesn't work. So if yours looks like this, you're kind of screwed. What we're hoping to see is if I could scroll this window down, we can actually see the optical drive in here. And I'll boot it up off of a VGA monitor and I'll show you what we're actually after. So here we are over on the VGA connected monitor. System information. Now you can see I've got the scroll bar. I can pull it down and right here I can see my drive on SATA channel 3, HL, DT, ST, DVD, RAM, GUD 0N. So right here we can see the computer is in fact seeing the drive. And when you're done here, just hit exit or hit escape and don't save any changes if you don't know what you're doing. Speaking of dual displays, if that's something you're interested in, be sure to subscribe to the channel because I'm going to cover how to set those guys up in a later video. You know, most TVs don't have VGA connectors on them. But for now, I think my work here is done. We've got our optical drive in. I think it looks pretty cool. It's going to give me a lot of years of service, I hope. And I hope you found this guide helpful and interesting. And as always, I appreciate you guys stopping in for this video. And we'll catch you on the next one. I'm Max, that's Saddington Bear, and we make videos like this all the time. Here are a couple links to some other videos we've made, and we really appreciate you guys stopping in.